I still remember the exact moment my career at Manhattan's most prestigious restaurant group shattered like dropped china on marble floors. The harsh fluorescent lights of the industrial kitchen buzzed overhead, casting unforgiving shadows across polished steel surfaces as 30 pairs of eyes locked onto me. Derek Sullivan paced in front of me, like a predator circling wounded prey, his designer chef coat pristine despite the chaos of dinner service, his voice rising with theatrical precision. He was orchestrating a performance, and I was the unwilling star being crucified for his entertainment. "Marcus," Derek announced, waving an invoice in my face like evidence at a trial. "This wine order disaster just cost us the Steinberg account." His words cut through the kitchen's usual symphony of sizzling pans and chopping knives. $100,000 client gone because you couldn't distinguish between a 2016 Barolo and a 2018 Brunello. My stomach plummeted as if I'd swallowed ice water. The junior staff exchanged uncomfortable glances, their eyes darting between Derek and me like spectators at a public execution. I'd been with this company for 8 years. 8 years of my life poured into these kitchens. I'd helped build this empire from a single struggling bistro in Soho to the crown jewel of New York's culinary scene, with locations in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Hamptons. These people had once looked up to me. They'd sought my advice on everything from knife techniques to career moves. I'd mentored half of them, celebrated their promotions, covered their shifts when life got messy. Now they stared at me like I was a stranger, or worse, a disappointment. "Clearly, Marcus, you're out of your depth in wine operations," Derek continued, his voice dripping with manufactured sympathy that made my skin crawl. "We need someone who truly understands the standards of fine dining. Someone who won't embarrass us in front of our most valued clients." The kitchen had fallen silent, except for the relentless hum of industrial refrigerators. Even the dishwashers had stopped their clatter to witness my humiliation. 8 years of 80-hour weeks, of missed birthdays and canceled dates, of choosing this kitchen over every other aspect of my life. All of it was about to be erased with Derek's next words. Then came the moment that would replay in my nightmares for months to come. Derek snapped his fingers twice, sharp, dismissive sounds that echoed off the steel walls like gunshots. Like he was summoning a waiter. Like I was nothing more than hired help who'd outlived his usefulness. "Security," he called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never doubted his own power. "Please escort Mr. Chun from the premises. His employment is terminated, effective immediately." The silence that followed was deafening until a single whisk slipped from someone's trembling hand, clattering against the floor tiles in what felt like slow motion. The metallic sound seemed to wake everyone from their shocked stupor, but no one moved. No one spoke. They just watched as 2 security guards I'd greeted every morning for years approached me with apologetic expressions. "I'm sorry, Marcus," whispered Jake, the head of security, a man I'd shared countless coffee breaks with. "I have to ask for your badge and keys." My hands shook as I fumbled with my chef's coat, fingers struggling with buttons I'd fastened thousands of times before. The keys to the wine cellar, the master keys to all locations, my security badge with the photo from my first day, hopeful, ambitious, believing in a future that had just been stolen from me. As the guards escorted me through the dining room, past tables of oblivious diners enjoying their expensive meals, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked exactly like what I was, a broken man walking through the wreckage of his career. That night, in my cramped studio apartment in Queens, the best I could afford on a restaurant salary in New York, I sat on my second-hand couch with a bottle of cheap wine, the kind Derek would have sneered at. The cork broke when I tried to open it, fragments floating in my first bitter sip of unemployment. 8 years. 8 years of my life given to that company, and not one person had spoken up for me. Not one person had said, "Wait, this doesn't seem right." They'd all just watched, protecting their own positions while I was fed to the wolves. My phone buzzed with messages throughout the night. Sympathetic but carefully worded text from kitchen staff who'd worked under me. "Sorry that happened, man. You didn't deserve that. Let me know if you need anything. This is messed up. Derek's lost his mind." Empty words from people too terrified to risk their own jobs. I understood their fear. I'd felt it myself many times, but understanding didn't make the abandonment sting any less. I scrolled through my work emails until I found it, dated exactly 1 week before my firing. The subject line screamed in all caps, "Urgent. Wine order correction needed, Steinberg event." I'd warned Derek about the vintage mistake. I'd outlined the Steinberg family's specific preferences, researched their collection, even suggested alternatives if the original selections couldn't be sourced. His response had been swift and dismissive. "Handled. Stay in your lane. Marcus." The wine glass froze halfway to my lips as the pieces clicked into place. Derek hadn't just fired me over his mistake. He'd engineered my downfall. He'd used his own error as ammunition to eliminate me, making me the scapegoat for his incompetence. The anger that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the hot, explosive rage that burns out quickly. This was cold, calculating fury that sharpened my focus like a blade being honed. It felt almost cleansing, like stepping from a steam-filled kitchen into crisp winter air. "You're going to regret this," I whispered to my empty apartment, and for the first time since leaving that kitchen, I meant every word. Sleep didn't come that night. At 3 a.m., I sat cross-legged on my bed, laptop balanced on my knees, diving deep into the digital footprints Derek had left across the internet. Something he'd said months ago kept nagging at me. The small detail that hadn't seemed important then, but now felt significant. We've been preparing for a meeting with an exclusive wine distributor from Bordeaux, and I'd asked to attend since sourcing was part of my role. Derek had laughed and told the supplier, "Marcus doesn't speak French, so he won't be necessary for the detailed discussions." At the time, I'd brushed it off as typical Derek arrogance. But now, with rage sharpening my memory, something felt off. Derek constantly bragged about his training at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, talked endlessly about his years immersed in authentic French cuisine, dropping French culinary terms in a casual conversation like breadcrumbs leading back to his supposed expertise. So why would someone who allegedly lived in France for 3 years assume I couldn't understand French unless he was protecting himself? Unless he was covering for his own inability? I opened a new browser tab and typed, "Derek Sullivan, Le Cordon Bleu, Paris." Instead of the flood of prestigious mentions I expected, I found nothing. No graduation announcements, no alumni spotlights, no mentions in culinary school publications. I refined my search. Derek Sullivan, Le Cordon Bleu graduate Paris cuisine. Again, nothing. My heartbeat quickened as I realized I might have found the first crack in Derek's carefully constructed facade. If he was lying about his French training, what else was fabricated? I spent the next hour digging deeper into Derek's most impressive credential, his James Beard Award nomination. He mentioned it constantly, in interviews, on menus, in his social media bio. It was practically tattooed on his professional identity. I called my friend Lisa, who worked at the James Beard Foundation despite the late hour. She owed me a favor from culinary school, and journalists worked odd hours anyway. "Lisa, I need you to check something for me," I said, trying to keep my voice casual despite my pounding heart. "Has Derek Sullivan ever been nominated for a James Beard Award?" The sound of typing echoed through the phone before Lisa responded. "Nothing under that name. What's the spelling?" "Sullivn. More typing. "Nope. What about the Rising Star Chef category? He specifically mentions being nominated in 2019. "Let me check. No, definitely not. Wait." A pause. "Oh, I see what might be confusing. He's listed in our industry directory, but that's just a paid professional listing. Anyone can submit themselves with a membership fee. It's not a nomination or recognition, just a networking tool." The lie was more brazen than I'd imagined. Derek had built his entire reputation on a fabrication so bold that no one had thought to verify it. He'd secured his position above me, commanded respect from investors and staff, all based on a membership directory listing that cost less than a good bottle of wine. "Thanks, Lisa. You've been incredibly helpful," I said, already formulating my next move. "Marcus, are you okay? You sound intense." "Just doing some research. I'll explain later." I needed more than suspicious absences from websites. I needed concrete evidence that Derek's entire professional history was fiction. The next morning, I called Miguel Santos, my former colleague who'd moved to Los Angeles 3 years ago to open his own place. We'd stayed in touch, and he knew the West Coast culinary scene better than anyone. "Miguel, I need a favor," I said, pacing my small apartment while we FaceTimed. Derek Sullivan claims he was sous chef at Maison Blanc in Beverly Hills from 2017 to 2019. Does that sound right to you? Miguel's laughter crackled through my phone speakers. Maison Blanc? Marcus, that place closed in 2015 after that massive food poisoning scandal. Remember? It made national news when half the staff got sick from their own kitchen. The building's been a Korean barbecue place for years now. I stopped pacing. "You're absolutely certain? There's no way it reopened under new management." "Dude, I drive past that corner every week. It's been Soul Garden since 2016. Before that, it sat empty for months because nobody wanted to lease a space with that reputation." The vindication mixed with disgust as the full scope of Derek's deception became clear. He hadn't just embellished his resume. He'd invented entire chapters of his career. And somehow, he'd convinced our restaurant group's board to hand him control of a multi-million-dollar operation without anyone bothering to verify a single claim. "Thanks, Miguel. You've given me exactly what I needed. Marcus, what's this about? You sound like you're planning something. Just getting my facts straight. I'll call you soon." After ending the call, I sat in the growing morning light of my apartment, feeling the weight of what I now knew. Derek wasn't just incompetent or arrogant. He was a complete fraud. And somehow, I was going to make sure the right people found out. I needed documented proof, not rumors and phone calls. Fortunately, 8 years at the restaurant group meant I still had access to our shared cloud drive, a rookie IT oversight they'd forgotten in their rush to humiliate me publicly. I logged in, heart pounding with each keystroke, half expecting to be locked out. But there was the entire company archive organized in folders I'd helped create during our digital transition 3 years ago. I navigated to the executive hiring folder, then to Derek's subfolder. His original pitch deck to investors was there, complete with a detailed resume attachment. The document was a masterpiece of fiction. Executive chef at Maison Blanc, the restaurant that had been closed for years. Culinary director at some resort in Colorado, which I made a note to verify, and his fabricated Le Cordon Bleu credentials prominently displayed. I downloaded everything onto a flash drive, but as I prepared to log out, another folder caught my attention: Private Vendor Agreements, Aita Sullivan. Curiosity won over caution. Inside were spreadsheets tracking wine purchases, but the numbers didn't match our regular vendor records. These invoices showed prices inflated by 20 to 25% across the board, and they were all from a company called Elite Vintages, LLC. Why would Derek keep separate vendor records? And why were we paying premium prices when I knew our regular distributors offered better rates for the same wines? I downloaded these files too, unsure of their significance, but sensing they were important. Whatever game Derek was playing went far beyond resume fraud. The next day, I spent hours cross-referencing the Elite Vintages invoices against our regular purchase orders. Normal company procedure required 3 competitive bids for any order over $5,000. But for months, Derek had been steering more and more business to Elite Vintages despite their consistently higher prices. A quick Google search revealed that Elite Vintages LLC was less than 18 months old, with a business registration in Delaware. Their website was sleek, but suspiciously light on actual information. No staff profiles, no company history, just glossy wine photos and vague promises of curated excellence for discerning establishments. On a hunch, I paid the $15 fee to access Delaware's business registry and pulled up Elite Vintage's full incorporation documents. They are listed as a consulting partner with a 35% ownership stake, was a name that made my blood boil: Derek M. Sullivan. He'd been approving inflated invoices from his own company, pocketing the markup while the restaurant group's beverage costs mysteriously increased quarter after quarter. No wonder he'd been so eager to take over wine purchasing from me. No wonder he'd push me out when I started asking questions about vendor relationships. This wasn't just resume fraud. It was systematic embezzlement. I printed everything: my hands steady with newfound purpose. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calculating, methodical, and completely focused on bringing Derek's house of cards crashing down. The next morning, I texted Robert Shun, the restaurant group CFO, and coincidentally, my second cousin. We'd maintained a professional relationship despite the family connection, and he'd always respected my operational insights. Coffee at Blue Bottle in Tribeca? Need to discuss something important. Just you. Robert had tried to recruit me for his finance team the previous year, impressed by how I'd optimized food costs across all locations. Derek had blocked the transfer, claiming he couldn't spare me from operations. Robert arrived looking puzzled, but ordered his usual courte do. We exchanged brief pleasantries, but he clearly sensed this wasn't a social call. "I'm guessing this is about your departure," he said carefully, stirring his coffee. I slid a manila envelope across the small table. "This is about Derek Sullivan. Everything in here is verifiable public record." Robert opened the envelope methodically, examining each document with the careful attention of someone who'd spent his career analyzing financial data. His expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight widening of his eyes when he reached the incorporation papers showing Derek's stake in Elite Vintages. He lingered over the falsified resume, making small check marks as he mentally verified what he could. The James Beard Foundation directory listing versus Derek's claims of nomination. The Maison Blanc employment dates versus the restaurant's actual closure. "Always knew something felt off," he finally said, closing the folder. The beverage costs never made sense, and he dodged basic questions about his background during the hiring process. The board was so impressed by his charisma and supposed credentials that they rushed the decision. He looked up at me, his expression serious. "Give me 72 hours to present this properly. I need to build an airtight case." I nodded, feeling the first flutter of vindication mixed with nervous anticipation. "Robert, I'm not looking to destroy the company. I just want justice," he finished. "I understand. And frankly, Derek's already damaged us more than you ever could." While Robert built his case, I continued digging. If Derek was cutting corners on wine purchasing, what other shortcuts was he taking? I scrolled through months of text messages between myself and the kitchen staff, looking for patterns I might have missed. There, from 4 months ago, a panic text from Alex, our sous chef at the Brooklyn location. "Derek wants us to use last week's halibut for tonight's special. Said you approved extending the use-by date. Please tell me you didn't." I hadn't. I'd immediately called Alex and told him to purchase fresh fish, then confronted Derek about the incident. He'd brushed it off as a miscommunication, but now I saw it as part of a larger pattern. More texts revealed Derek's systematic pressure to cut food safety corners, stretching expensive ingredients beyond their prime, masking questionable seafood with heavy sauces, instructing staff to ignore temperature protocols during busy services. In one particularly damning exchange from 2 months ago, Derek had told our pastry chef to use judgment, not expiration dates, when dealing with dairy products that had been left at room temperature overnight. I compiled every message, every instance where Derek had tried to compromise food safety standards. This wasn't just unprofessional. It was potentially dangerous to customers and could result in the kind of health department violations that destroyed restaurants permanently. I created an anonymous email account and drafted a detailed message to the New York City Department of Health, attaching all the evidence. Then I hesitated. This would affect everyone who worked at our restaurants, not just Derek. I thought of the line cooks who depended on steady paychecks, the servers working their way through college, the dishwashers supporting families. I saved the draft without sending it. This was my nuclear option, something to hold in reserve if Derek somehow managed to wiggle out of the financial fraud charges. My phone buzzed that evening with a message from Sophia, one of the junior cooks I'd mentored at the Manhattan location. She'd started as a prep cook 2 years ago and had worked her way up to guard manger under my guidance. "You need to see this," she wrote, followed by a video attachment. "This is from yesterday's dinner service." The footage, clearly recorded secretly from behind a prep station, showed Derek instructing 2 kitchen staff to swap date labels on containers of seafood. The timestamps on the original labels, clearly visible in the frame, showed product that was 5 days beyond its safe use date. He's been doing this regularly. Sophia's next message read, "We're all keeping records now. This isn't right, Marcus. Someone's going to get seriously sick." Several more messages followed from other staff members, people I'd trained, people who'd looked up to me, people who were finally finding the courage to document Derek's dangerous practices. "Just tell us what you need," Sophia added. "You taught us that standards matter. Derek's going to hurt someone or get the restaurants shut down." I felt a surge of emotion that caught me off guard. I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. The kitchen staff, the real heart of any restaurant, saw through Derek's charismatic facade and remembered the principles I tried to instill in them. "Keep documenting everything," I texted back. "But be careful. Don't risk your jobs until we have enough evidence to make this stick." The video was damning, but I needed more. I needed a pattern so clear that even Derek's charm couldn't explain it away. That weekend, I received an unexpected call from Elena Rodriguez, one of the restaurant group's primary investors. A formidable woman in her 60s who'd built a food service empire from a single food truck. She had legendary business instincts and zero tolerance for incompetence. "Marcus, I've been hearing concerning things about operations since your departure," she said without preamble. "Would you meet me for coffee tomorrow?" The Ritz-Carlton Lounge, 2 p.m. At the upscale hotel lounge where Elena practically held court most afternoons, she studied me over her reading glasses while sipping espresso. "Derek is making reckless decisions," she said directly. "Vendor changes without proper vetting, menu overhauls without testing, staffing cuts that are affecting service quality. The financial reports have been erratic since you left." She leaned forward slightly. "And frankly, I never trusted that man. His stories never quite aligned. Last month, he told me he learned a particular wine pairing technique in Burgundy. The month before, it was Tuscany. I've been in this business for 40 years. Marcus, I know when someone's cooking up stories along with the food." I weighed my options carefully, then decided to trust my instincts. I reached into my bag and slid a USB drive across the table. "You'll want to review this privately," I said quietly. "Everything is documented and verifiable." Elena pocketed the drive without looking at it. "I'll be in touch within 48 hours. She signaled for the check. "And Marcus? Don't disappear. We're going to need you." Robert called the next morning while I was attempting to make breakfast in my tiny kitchen. "I've been up most of the night with the forensic accounting team," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The Elite Vintages kickback scheme is just the tip of the iceberg. We found padded expense reports, falsified reimbursements, and creative accounting and staffing budgets that go back 18 months. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. We're talking about systematic fraud totaling over $300,000. "What happens now?" "Emergency board meeting Monday morning. Elena's called it. The evidence is overwhelming." He paused. "Marcus, this goes beyond financial misconduct. I saw the health code violation evidence too. Between that and everything else," Derek's finished. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope. "Robert, Don't thank me yet," he interrupted. "You did the hard work of uncovering this. You probably saved the company from a much bigger scandal down the road." Curious about Derek's state of mind as his world silently unraveled around him, I made a reservation at our flagship Manhattan location under my friend's name for that Saturday night. I dressed differently from my usual work attire. Contact lenses instead of glasses, a blazer instead of chef's whites, my hair styled instead of pulled back practically. From a corner table with a clear view of the open kitchen, I watched Derek perform for the packed dining room. He moved from table to table like a politician working a crowd, the consummate celebrity chef soaking up attention and praise. He was hosting a special tasting menu for local food critics and influencers, basking in their admiration while presenting dishes that I knew contained corners he'd cut and shortcuts he demanded. The secret is my classical French training combined with modern American sensibilities, I overheard him tell a food blogger at a nearby table. But the real magic comes from our local sourcing program that I developed. My jaw clenched. I had built that sourcing program, spending years cultivating relationships with upstate farmers and Long Island fishermen. Derek had simply inherited my work and taken credit for it. Later, as dessert was served, Derek addressed the entire dining room with champagne flute raised high. We're excited to announce our expansion plans. 3 new concepts opening in the next 18 months. The numbers are phenomenal, and we're looking at markets in Boston, Philadelphia, and D.C. I nearly choked on my wine. Those projections could only be based on his fraudulent financial reports. Derek wasn't just trying to save his reputation. He was doubling down on his deception, potentially dragging investors and the entire company deeper into his web of lies. Sunday night, I created a fake email address and crafted an elaborate message requesting an interview with Derek for a fictitious publication called Culinary Masters Quarterly. "We're particularly interested in your training at Le Cordon Bleu," I wrote. "Could you share specific details about your mentors there and how the classical French approach influences your current menu development? We'd also love to connect with some of your instructors for additional perspective on your time in Paris." Within 2 hours, Derek replied with an enthusiastic, detail-filled response. He named specific mentors who had supposedly shaped his philosophy, described graduation ceremonies that never happened, and even attached a photograph of himself at a Parisian cafe that I quickly identified as stolen from another chef's Instagram account through a reverse image search. I forwarded the entire exchange to Robert and Elena with a simple note: "For Monday's meeting, Derek's latest claims about his French training, along with documentation from Le Cordon Bleu confirming they have no record of his attendance." By now, I felt oddly calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting the business I'd helped build, the staff who deserved honest leadership, and the culinary standards that were being systematically corrupted. Derek had dug his own grave with every lie he'd told. I was just making sure everyone could see how deep it went. Monday morning arrived with surprising clarity. I woke before dawn, not from anxiety, but from a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in weeks. Today, Derek's carefully constructed world would finally collapse under the weight of its own deceptions. Just before the 9 a.m. board meeting, fate delivered one final piece of evidence. The New York City Department of Health arrived at our downtown location for a surprise inspection, responding to what they described as multiple anonymous complaints regarding food safety practices. I hadn't sent my drafted email, but apparently someone else had filed similar reports. My phone buzzed with real-time updates from Sophia and other kitchen staff. "Health inspectors are here. They're checking everything. Found expired seafood in the walk-in." Derek's freaking out. "Inspector just asked Derek why the halibut is dated from last Tuesday." Derek started yelling. Then came the video that sealed Derek's fate. Sophia had secretly recorded Derek's complete meltdown as the health inspector calmly pointed out violations. The footage showed Derek, his charming facade completely shattered, screaming at a stone-faced city official. "Do you know who I am?" Derek shouted, his face red with rage. "This is harassment. These are world-class kitchens run by a James Beard-nominated chef." The inspector remained calm, clipboard in hand. "Sir, this seafood is dated from 6 days ago. That's a serious violation." Derek's meltdown escalated. He knocked the clipboard from the inspector's hands, shouting, "Get out of my kitchen. I'll have your job for this." The video ended with Derek being physically restrained by his own staff as the inspector calmly documented additional violations. I watched the footage twice, hardly believing my eyes. The controlled, charismatic celebrity chef mask had completely disintegrated, revealing the desperate fraud underneath. Within minutes, I forwarded the video to Robert with a simple message: "Evidence received and documented by board meeting." The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. At 9:05, my phone started buzzing with texts from various contacts still at the company. Derek just walked in looking confident. He's got a presentation about expansion plans. Board members are stone-faced, not making eye contact with him. Elena just walked in with a thick folder. Derek's expression just changed. At 9:12, Robert's name appeared on my screen. "Presentation starting now." I imagined the scene. Derek standing at the head of the polished conference table, expecting to discuss his grand vision for the company's future. Instead, Elena and Robert systematically laying out 18 months of fraud, financial misconduct, health code violations, and fabricated credentials. 15 minutes of silence followed, the longest 15 minutes of my life. Then finally, it's over. Derek's been terminated effective immediately and escorted from the building. I stare at my phone, a complex wave of emotions washing over me. Relief, vindication, and strangely, a touch of sadness for what the company could have been if Derek had simply chosen honesty over deception. What did he say? I texted back. Nothing at first. Just kept repeating this is a mistake. Then he tried to blame you. Said you were sabotaging him out of jealousy. The evidence was too overwhelming. Elena wasn't having any of it. Justice had been swift, precise, and private, exactly as it should have been in a professional setting. Derek's erasure from the company happened with breathtaking efficiency. By noon, his biography had vanished from the company website. His professional headshots, once prominently featured on marketing materials, disappeared. His name was removed from all restaurant menus and social media accounts. No press release, no dramatic announcement, just absence. When customers asked about the celebrity chef, staff had been instructed to simply say, "Chef Sullivan is no longer with our restaurant group." In New York's competitive culinary world, such a sudden disappearance spoke volumes. The silence around his departure was more damning than any public statement could have been. Sophia called me that evening, her voice hushed despite being off shift. "It's surreal here, Marcus." Derek's office was completely cleaned out during lunch service, like he never existed. But honestly, she paused. Everyone's relieved. The kitchen feels different already, lighter somehow. How's the team handling it? Better than expected. The new interim chef actually listens to us. And Marcus? Her voice brightened. We're going back to your sourcing standards. Real relationships with real farms, not Derek's cost-cutting bullshit. For the first time in weeks, I found myself smiling. 3 days after Derek's termination, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Is this Marcus Chun? Yes. This is Jennifer Walsh from Eater, New York. I'm working on a story about Derek Sullivan's departure from a metropolitan restaurant group. Chef Sullivan suggested I speak with you. He claims you were terminated for financial improprieties and that you've been spreading false information about him in retaliation. Care to respond? The audacity was breathtaking. Even in defeat, Derek was trying to flip the narrative and paint me as the villain. Ms. Walsh, I said carefully, I appreciate you reaching out for both sides of the story. That's responsible journalism. I'd be happy to provide documentation regarding my departure and the subsequent events, if that would be helpful for your article. There was a notable pause. Documentation, employment records, email correspondence, timestamp warnings about the wine order Derek blamed me for, health inspection reports, financial records showing vendor kickbacks, board presentations. Would those be relevant to your story? Another longer pause. Very relevant. Could you send those over? Of course. I'd also suggest asking Chef Sullivan about Elite Vintages LLC and his ownership stake in that company. His response might be quite newsworthy. Instead of publishing Derek's attempted smear campaign, Eater New York ran a detailed investigative piece 2 days later. The article, titled "The Rise and Fall of a Culinary Con Man," methodically dismantled Derek's fabricated credentials while revealing the scope of his financial fraud. The piece painted me not as a disgruntled ex-employee, but as a whistleblower who'd helped expose systematic corruption that could have destroyed a respected restaurant group. My phone didn't stop ringing for days. Job offers from competing restaurant groups, requests for interviews, invitations to speak at culinary conferences about operational integrity. The industry, it seemed, was hungry for someone who prioritized substance over spectacle. But none of the opportunities felt quite right. 8 years of working for someone else, of building other people's dreams while my own remained deferred, had taught me something important. I was done making other people rich from my expertise. Weeks passed as I considered my options. Then, on a rainy Tuesday that felt heavy with possibility, my phone lit up with a text from Alex, the sous chef from our Brooklyn location. "Thought you'd want to see this," he wrote, attaching a photograph that made me laugh out loud despite everything. The image showed Derek in a pristine white chef's coat, standing behind an omelet station at what appeared to be a hotel breakfast buffet. The caption read, "Meet our new culinary director, James Beard-nominated chef Derek Sullivan." The location tag revealed Mountain View Resort and Conference Center, Denver, Colorado. So that's where he'd landed. Not at another prestigious restaurant group, but at a mid-tier hotel, still clinging to his fabricated credentials, still lying, still convinced that perception mattered more than reality. "He's been gone a month, and everything's running smoother," Alex added. "The new executive chef actually values our input. And guess what? We're back to your local sourcing program. The food tastes like food again." I smiled, setting down my phone. Derek hadn't learned anything from his downfall, but the restaurant had. Sometimes that's as much justice as you can hope for. The call from Elena Rodriguez came exactly 6 weeks after Derek's termination. "Marcus, I need to see you. Lunch tomorrow at Daniel, 1 p.m. Don't be late." At the Michelin-starred restaurant on the Upper East Side, Elena wasted no time on pleasantries. "I'm starting a new venture," she announced before I'd even settled into my chair. "A culinary incubator in the meatpacking district, supporting real talent from diverse backgrounds, providing kitchen space, mentorship, and business guidance for chefs who have vision but lack opportunity." I nodded politely, unsure where this was heading. "That sounds like an incredible project." "It will be," she agreed, sliding a leather portfolio across the table, "because you're going to run it." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Operations, programming, mentorship, strategic partnerships, all of it. I need someone with both kitchen experience and business acumen. Someone with integrity." Her eyes fixed on mine with laser focus. "Someone who values substance over spectacle, authenticity over image." I opened the portfolio with trembling hands. Inside was a detailed business plan, complete with a salary figure that was nearly double what I'd been making, plus an equity stake that could set me up for life. "This is overwhelming, Elena. I don't know what to say." Her expression softened slightly. "You built the Metropolitan Restaurant Group from nothing, Marcus. Everyone in the industry knows that, regardless of who tried to take credit. You turned a failing Soho bistro into a culinary empire." She tapped the portfolio. "This time, your name goes on the door. No hiding in the shadows. No letting someone else take credit for your vision." My heart raced with possibilities I'd never dared to imagine. Building something from scratch, mentoring the next generation of chefs, creating opportunities for people like me who'd been overlooked or pushed aside by charming frauds. "When do you need an answer?" I asked, though my voice already betrayed my excitement. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. "You already gave it. I can see it in your eyes." She raised her wine glass. "Welcome to the next chapter, Marcus." The transformation of my life continued to unfold in ways I'd never anticipated. 6 months after Derek's downfall, I found myself sitting across from a reporter from Food and Wine magazine, discussing not scandal or revenge, but innovation and mentorship. "This isn't a traditional profile," explained Sarah Chun, no relation, despite sharing a surname, the magazine's senior editor. "We're focusing our fall issue on leadership in the culinary world. Not just who's creating buzz, but who's creating lasting change." The interview had already lasted 2 hours, covering everything from Forge's scholarship program for underprivileged culinary students to our partnership with urban farms in Queens and the Bronx. We discussed our residency program, where established chefs worked alongside newcomers, creating an environment where experience was shared rather than hoarded. What makes Forge different isn't just the equipment or the space, I found myself saying. It's the culture. We believe that great food comes from great people, and great people deserve honest leadership, fair compensation, and opportunities to grow. Sarah leaned forward. "That sounds like a direct response to your experience at Metropolitan." I chose my words carefully. Every kitchen has its own personality, shaped by the people who run it. At Forge, we're intentional about creating an environment where authenticity is valued over image, where people succeed based on their actual abilities rather than their ability to self-promote. "Speaking of authenticity," Sarah continued, "Derek Sullivan recently gave an interview claiming that his departure from Metropolitan was the result of a coordinated campaign by disgruntled former employees. Care to respond?" I almost smiled. Even from his hotel kitchen in Denver, Derek was still trying to rewrite history. I think people in our industry are smart enough to distinguish between documented facts and convenient narratives. The evidence speaks for itself. And what does that evidence say? That integrity matters. That shortcuts always catch up with you eventually. And that the people who do the actual work, the line cooks, the prep staff, servers, they see everything. You can fool investors and food critics for a while, but you can't fool the people who work beside you every day. Sarah nodded, making notes. For the photo shoot, we like to capture you working with your team, showing the collaborative environment you've created. My instinct was still to deflect, to keep myself out of the spotlight. But something had fundamentally changed in me. Perhaps it was surviving Derek's betrayal, or building Forge from nothing, or simply growing tired of hiding behind other people's ambitions. That sounds perfect, I heard myself say. I think it's important for people to see that leadership doesn't always look like what they expect. 2 weeks later, I held the magazine in hands that no longer trembled with uncertainty. My photograph, not posed or styled, but captured while I demonstrated knife techniques to a group of young chefs, graced a full-page spread. The headline read, "The Quiet Revolutionary: How Marcus Chun is Reshaping New York's Culinary Future." The article detailed not just Forge's programs, but the broader impact we were having on the industry. Former residents had opened successful restaurants across the city, each carrying forward the principles of honesty and collaboration we'd instilled. Our scholarship program had already placed dozens of underrepresented students in top culinary schools. Most importantly, the piece positioned me not as a victim of Derek's fraud, but as a leader who transformed personal betrayal into positive change for an entire community. The phone calls started immediately. Investment offers, partnership proposals, speaking engagements at culinary conferences. But the call that mattered most came from my mother in San Francisco. "Marcus," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "your father and I are so proud. Not just of the success, but of how you handled everything. You could have been bitter, could have let that man's betrayal destroy you. Instead, you built something beautiful." I looked around my office at Forge. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, the walls lined with photos of our resident chefs at work, the shelf holding awards from the James Beard Foundation and the International Association of Culinary Professionals recognizing our innovation in culinary education. I had good teachers, I told her. "You and Dad taught me that dignity isn't something someone can take from you. It's something you maintain by how you respond to adversity." 1 year to the day after my public humiliation at Metropolitan, we hosted Forge's first annual Authenticity Awards celebration. The warehouse space buzzed with energy as food industry professionals, investors, local politicians, and media mingled with our resident chefs and scholarship recipients. The event served a dual purpose, showcasing the incredible food our residents were creating and raising funds for our expansion to Philadelphia and Los Angeles. But for me, it represented something more profound, a complete transformation from the person who'd been escorted out of Derek's kitchen in shame. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as Forge's board chair, called for attention as the evening reached its crescendo. The room quieted as she handed me a microphone. 1 year ago, I began looking out at faces both familiar and new. I thought my career was over. I've been publicly fired for someone else's mistakes, blamed for failures that weren't mine, made a scapegoat for systemic problems I'd actually tried to solve. I paused, taking in the space we'd created, where 12 formerly overlooked sous chefs had launched successful concepts, where line cooks were becoming entrepreneurs, where authenticity was valued above all else. But failure, I learned, isn't about falling down. It's about staying down. Tonight, surrounded by all of you, I realized that Derek Sullivan didn't end my career that day in his kitchen. My voice grew stronger with each word. He freed me to build something better. The room erupted in applause as glasses clinked and conversations resumed. But I took a moment to step back and appreciate the journey, not despite Derek's attempt to destroy me, but because of it. I raised my glass one final time, speaking to the room, but really to myself. We don't serve lies here. We never will. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing applications for Forge's newest location in Austin. Unknown number, but something compelled me to answer. Marcus? It's Derek. I hadn't heard his voice in 3 years, but it was unmistakable, though changed. The bombastic confidence had been replaced by something smaller, more desperate. What can I do for you, Derek? I kept my tone professional despite the sudden acceleration of my heartbeat. I've been following your success with Forge. It's impressive, really impressive. A long pause. Look, I'm not in Denver anymore. The hotel thing didn't work out. I'm back in New York consulting with small restaurants, helping them develop concepts. I almost laughed at the euphemism. Derek had gone from running a multi-million-dollar restaurant group to whatever consulting work he could scrape together. The thing is, I saw that you're expanding your advisory board at Forge, adding industry veterans to mentor the residents. His voice carried a desperate edge. I was thinking, maybe we could put the past behind us. I have experience, knowledge. Derek, I interrupted gently. I only work with people who've earned their positions through honest credentials and authentic experience. Marcus, please. I've learned from my mistakes. I can change. I'm sure you have, I said, though I doubted it entirely. But Forge was built on principles that I won't compromise. Integrity, authenticity, honest leadership. Those aren't just words on our website. They're the foundation of everything we do. A long silence stretched between us. I understand, Derek finally said, his voice small and defeated. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, and I meant it. But it won't be here. After hanging up, I sat in my office overlooking the meatpacking district, watching young chefs through the glass walls as they worked on dishes that would soon be served in restaurants across the city. These were people who'd earned their opportunities through talent, dedication, and honesty. The same principles Derek had abandoned in his pursuit of shortcuts to success. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek's betrayal had forced me to discover my own strength, to build something more meaningful than anything I could have achieved in a shadow. His attempt to destroy me had instead set me free to become who I was always meant to be. My assistant knocked on the door, holding a stack of applications from prospective residents. The selection committee is ready for you, Marcus. I stood, straightening my jacket, and headed toward the conference room where we'd choose the next generation of chefs to benefit from Forge's programs. People who, like me, might have been overlooked or underestimated by others, but who deserved a chance to prove their worth through authentic excellence. As I walked through the bustling kitchen, past the wall of photos showing our successful graduates, past the James Beard Award recognizing Forge as the nation's most innovative culinary education program, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for Derek's betrayal, but for my response to it, not for the pain he'd caused, but for the strength I'd discovered in overcoming it. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you'll ever do. Derek Sullivan had unknowingly given me the greatest gift possible, the chance to build a life and career based entirely on my own values, my own vision, my own authentic self. And unlike his house of cards built on lies, what I'd created would stand the test of time.